So what do you think the second step of installing Kali from the ISO file is? That's right, installation. The ISO file for Light Kali has been downloaded and it's in the Downloads folder. Now I go to VMware Fusion Virtual Machine Library. From the upper left corner, click the Add button and select New. We're on the installation method selection window. So the big option, which is selected by default, is our option, install from disk or image. Now I can click Continue to move on. So now is the time to select the ISO file. We can't just drop the file if we drag it from over here. Here's the file browser. Select the ISO file, drag and drop it in the installation wizard, and click Continue. In the next step, we have to choose the operating system of the VM. Now we know that Kali is a Debian-based Linux distro, and we downloaded the 64-bit version, so choose Linux, then the 64-bit version of the latest Debian, and once again click Continue. You can select the firmware type of a virtual machine. Legacy BIOS is a standard BIOS firmware. UEFI is an interface between the operating system and the platform firmware. So if you do select UEFI, you have the option of enabling UEFI Secure Boot. And of course, that secures the boot process. So now here I'm going to choose the Legacy BIOS option. So now we're on the last step of installation, and there's a summary here. The default values are 2 gigabytes of RAM, networking, etc. So when I click the Finish button, it asks for the location and the name of the VM file. I'm okay with the default. It's better to collect VMs in the same location, in my opinion. That way I stay organized, and I recommend you do too. And click Save. Now the VM boots for the very first time. In the boot menu, choose one of the install or graphical install options. I'll show you what the graphical install looks like now. As you see, it's a typical operating system installation. We need to configure the OS now. So I'll select the language, location, and keyboard configuration. And now network configuration has been completed successfully. So I'll set the host name to Kali, and let's give it a domain name. I'll just choose the same name and continue. I'll set the username and password for the new user. Because Kali will not use a root account by default when it's started. Don't need any partitions. We're only installing Kali Lite as a virtual machine, so it can use the entire disk reserved for itself. Continue. Keep going with the default options for disk partitioning. Yes, write the changes to disks. Now the system is being installed. And just like before, it may take several minutes. So here Kali asks for the HTTP proxy information, but we're not going to need it now, so we can just leave it blank and continue. And in this section, you can choose the desktop environment that you want to use. Kali is no longer offering separate images for every desktop environment. There's just a single image for all of them. And it can be chosen during installation. So I will continue with the default option, XFCE. It's asking to install the grep bootloader to the master boot record. Now, this is more meaningful when you install an operating system as a second one on the host. We're just installing a virtual machine, so it's the only operating system for it. So, yes, install the grub bootloader to the master boot record. We have only one partition to install, grub, so I select that and continue. And installation is complete. So it's time to boot into our new system. Continue. We are finally at the login screen. Log in with username and password that you've set. Welcome to 64-bit Kali installed by the ISO file. So I want to turn it off for now. Now let's go to the folder that we chose for installation, order by date modified, and here is the Kali Lite VM file.